Yes, and unfortunately, we were only able to squeeze in a little bit, but I got you at least, hopefully, right?
Yeah, no, you did for sure.
Oh, good.
How are things going?
Oh, it is, boy, it is crazy busy. It's a pretty different world from when you and I were working together, many years ago. It has gotten roughly, I don't know, 10 times bigger in terms of the activity out there. It's, the dollars flowing around are, maybe not quite 10 times as, 10 times the bubble bigness, but lots and lots of money flowing around. But what's most amazing is just the explosion in the number of entrepreneurs out there, both, right here in the Valley, but all over the world. It's a pretty dramatically different ecosystem than it was in the old days. So what do I got here, and what do you want to talk about?
Well, we've got a class. This one's called e-marketing, but we spent a lot of time talking about new ventures, entrepreneurs, startups. We're doing projects for a number of local businesses right now. I'll actually let the students take a minute to introduce themselves.
Okay.
And then we're hoping to learn more about, kind of your journey, where you started, how you got involved in this, what keeps you going every day, what kind of investments you're looking for.
Okay.
Kind of the normal stuff.
All right. Okay. Great. So, yeah. So, do you want to start with quick introductions of who we got in the room? So,
I'm going to move, and we'll let John.
Okay.
My name is Johnny Burrell, and I'm a business major.
I'm sorry. Hold on a second. Where are you?
Right here.
There you are. Okay. All right.
We're going to start here and go this way.
All right. Got it now. Thanks. All right.
So my name is Roberts.
Why are you guys all so far away? That's okay. All right. That's okay. I know it was, I assume it was to try to get the wide angle and get everyone in. Is that it? That's fine.
Getting students in the front row is often challenging.
Oh, I totally get that. All right. All right.
Can you see them okay now?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Hi. All right. So now, there. That's better. Thank you. Okay.
Can you jump up one, Jacob?
I can't jump up
one row. Well, you don't have to necessarily jump.
I'm Antonio Gracia.
Literally.
I'm Michael Gosler, and I'm a business major as well.
Okay.
James Creason, business major.
Okay.
Here in the back, I'm Mackenzie Kissel. I'm a business major.
All right.
Taylor Smith, I'm a graduate student pursuing my master's in business.
All right. Okay.
My name is Jacob Schultz. I'm a business student.
All right. Okay, so most of you are undergrads. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. Yeah, in terms of other information, James is vice president of the Entrepreneurship Club, and Taylor, past president of the Entrepreneurship Club.
Aha.
He had a little experience with that as well.
Okay. All right. And now, are most of you heading down a path of wanting to become entrepreneurs, or are you already down the path and you are entrepreneurs, or are you wanting to become VCs, or are you in a situation where you can become angels?
My angel would be an angel investor. Like
Well, I've got a good position at the job that I've been working at a high school, and would probably be interested in learning more about how private equity works for this particular business. So,
Okay.
be good to maybe talk about some private equity stuff for my education.
Okay.
James is also a commercial pilot, and he's involved
Wow.
in business where they do commercial, is that the right term?
Aerophotography.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm the head of agriculture for this aerophotography company, and we're looking to expand into different geographic regions, and that
Okay.
costs money. So yeah, private equity is probably a route, but we can talk about that later.
Okay. Or what about drones?
Well, drones are the direction that the market is going, but legal reasons are keeping us away from them because drones currently cannot shoot 500,000 acres a week like we can.
Ah,
So
interesting. Okay.
a lot of
Oh, interesting.
large
Yeah.
volume, large acreage volume. Drones are not capable, well, not allowed to do it right now.
Because of line of sight. That's the issue?
Correct, and
Yeah.
altitude restrictions as well. They're restricted to 400 feet, whereas we fly 10,000.
Okay. All right. Right. So, great. Okay. So Wilson, what, what do you want to talk about? I can talk about, whatever you want. I think we decided to do it as a Q&A, right?
Well, I think what we talked about is not doing any kind of a formal presentation, but it's
Right.
like you had some kind of a normal scenario that you talked through in terms of, how you got started,
Yeah.
high points, low points, what's
Right.
and
Right.
because Q&A is cool too, and we're having questions, but
Okay.
we may not always know the right questions to ask either, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, no, that's fine. Right. So sure, I figured I'd start out with a little bit of the journey, outline in terms of, pardon?
The other piece of information I was going to throw in is you talked about drones, but it turns out that the gorge, the Columbia River Gorge, that's just west of here, is a huge focal point for the drone industry, because it turns out that there was an avionics company that did a lot of work for Boeing was based there. And of course, people left there and did their own startups. And so it's a huge pocket of drone technology there. And then in Pendleton, which is just over the hill from us, about 40 minutes from here, at the Pendleton Airport, they have a drone kind of an industry focusing on drones too. Is that the right way to put it?
They're trying to be the drone capital of the world for drone testing and innovation. So.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they have it's an old air base, the Pendleton Airport, so they have a lot of space, a lot of open land. And yeah, they're losing a lot of they're trying to do it.
Okay. Well, my understanding of what's going on is that the Chinese have pretty much taken the lead on the whole drone technology thing. Maybe we can sort of maintain some advantage around software and some of the application domains, but the Chinese certainly seem to be winning the game, at least on the hardware side of the drone world. But that's interesting. I did not know that how much was going on in drones up there. So that's cool. So okay, with that, should I launch into sort of the relatively short story on sort of what I've learned over the years?
Sure, yeah, that'd be a great thing to do.
Yeah. Just Joe. So in terms of my own background, so today, starting now, starting with the present. So I'm managing director of Garage Technology Ventures, and Garage is a seed and early stage venture capital firm based here in Silicon Valley. And we are now on our 5th fund, and we're focused on broadly on technology. So as a fund, we decided from day one to be generally technology agnostic, which was a conscious decision contrary to what is a fairly standard approach to venture capital, which is to have a technology thesis or a sector thesis. we're going to focus on SaaS software. We're going to focus on AI and robotics, or we're going to focus on, enterprise software, whatever. So we just decided that technology changes too fast, and we could never be the smartest guys about any one technology anyway. And so we decided what we would do is crowdsource the next big thing and cast the net very broadly, to see if we could see emerging trends and identify, potentially highly successful or disruptive emerging technologies before they become fads. So that's worked pretty well for us in a lot of ways. We wound up getting into material science before most VCs really had an idea of what material science was, much less investing in it. And it wound up, material science became sort of the core of what then became clean tech. So we wound up being very early, strong, as a small fund, nevertheless very early, strong players in clean tech. And we're one of the most successful clean tech venture capitalists in Silicon Valley, which was actually a pretty low bar because not a lot of VCs have made any money in clean tech. We're more the exception to the rule. So, okay, so how did I get here from there? So long ago and far away, when I was sitting in a room similar to the room you guys are sitting in, when I was, though actually I was a graduate student at the time, I was a graduate student here at Stanford, in the business school at Stanford. And it happened that through a series of relationships, I was doing a project for a local VC here in the Valley. And it's funny because I don't even remember what the project was. But in the course of working on the project, I was complaining about the lack of software available to do the sort of things that we wanted to do. So now I'm going to date myself. This is back in the early 80s. So this is the early 80s. So a long time ago. And what was happening back then, believe it or not, that was just when the PC was announced. And the problem with the PC when it first came out was there was very little sophisticated software available on the PC. And so prior to business school, I had actually worked at McKinsey & Company. And at McKinsey, I had access to all sorts of amazing tools and technologies. It happened, so you might appreciate this. Yeah. These technologies were available on mini computers via timeshare. So, unbelievably different world. But, in an odd sense, it's the world we're in today. So I had a bunch of applications that were available in the cloud. And by in the cloud, what that meant was they were sitting on a mini computer in the New York office of McKinsey, and I was in the Los Angeles office of McKinsey. So just like the cloud today, right? But pretty dramatically slower. So then the PC comes out and we think, oh my God, this is so cool because we could have an entire computer dedicated just to us. We didn't have to timeshare. We didn't have to dial up. But there was no good software available for it. So I was complaining to this VC about the lack of good software on the PC. And he turned to me and he said, well, why don't you go solve that problem? And I said, well, I got other plans. I had these grandiose plans of what I was going to do after business school. And he said, no, really. You should figure out how to solve this problem. So he talked me into it, and I got together with a buddy, and we built out a plan for developing a suite of sophisticated financial analytic tools for the PC, primarily for enterprise use at the mainly financial services level, and it was great. So we developed this plan. We matrixed out all the tools we were going to develop. We go back to the VC, and he said, great, this is good. So open a bank account. This is the most amazing conversation, still to this day. It's the most amazing conversation I've had with a VC. So he says, open a bank account, and then call up Carl. Carl was his CFO. Call up Carl and tell him to fill it up. And I look at my buddy and I say, God, I wonder what he means by fill it up. And it was crazy. I mean, literally, we didn't even ask. We didn't even ask what he meant by fill it up. We figured Carl would tell us what he meant. But so we go to Carl. It turns out fill it up meant $600,000. So it was pretty good. It was pretty good for a slideshow. So we launched this company. Long story short, we had to pivot several times, but after pivoting several times, we were on a rocket ship of success. We had landed, Charles. We wound up doing development. The pivot was, instead of developing our own software, we wound up developing software for other brand name companies. Like, we developed the first money management software for Charles Schwab. And then we got a deal from Dow Jones. Dow Jones wanted us to develop a series of packages for them. And so we were going to the moon until one day, after slipping, a couple of months and a couple of $1 million on our delivery of our software to Dow Jones walked in one day and took over the entire company, kicked us all out, took all the code, and that was the end of the company. So we just basically crashed and burned. So I was, whatever I was, 26, whatever. I was 26 years old, and I had lost what I thought I had was millions and millions of dollars. And then all of a sudden, it was all gone. Kaboom. But the good thing about Silicon Valley is that when you crash and burn, you pick yourself up and you dust yourself off, and then you spin the story a little bit, and then you go do it again. So I was able to go do it again, and went in, and actually my second company was actually a restart. It was a company that was crashing and burning. And so I now had a reputation for knowing about crashing and burning, right? So the VCs thought, maybe Bill kind of understands what's going wrong here. So I went in with another buddy of mine and took a poke around, and we said, wow, this is a diamond in the rough. We can turn it around. And so they handed it over to us, and we wound up taking it public. It was phenomenal. So now I think I got this entrepreneur thing down cold. So I take my winnings and I jump into this another company that was like the coolest technology I had ever seen in my life. So this is now 1990. We found this technology at SRI, which was the Stanford Research Institute. So here's the big idea. So imagine you had a computer that is no keyboard. It's just a piece of glass, and you interact with the computer by touching the glass. Could you imagine how cool that would be? So this is it's 1990, and we built this touchscreen computer. We called it the Portfolio. We didn't think about iPad as a name, but in any case, and it was unbelievably cool. It was a eye opener, for the universe. I took around our prototype, and everybody drooled over it. And when I asked them how many would they buy, I went to engineering firms and architecture firms and law firms and stock trading firms and accounting firms and real estate firms and manufacturing firms. I went to all of these companies all over the country, meeting with all these guys, and everybody thought it was super cool. But when I told them the price, it was $6,000 for this, touchscreen computer. They said, boy, we'll buy one. So, so I come back. In any case, long story short, we were a little bit early, just a little bit. So it turned out that the iPad came out almost exactly 20 years later. So it was a little bit early, but in any case, so I learned a little bit of humility about, cool technology is not necessarily commercializable technology. And what seems obvious, at the time, it just seemed obvious that, there was an application for this touchscreen computer. And, of course it made sense. But just because it's obvious doesn't mean you're going to be able to build a successful company doing it if there's not, what we now refer to as product market fit, that it's got to deliver value at a price point that is going to give a return for the customer. Oh, well.
The other corollary is that the best technology doesn't always win.
Right. Yeah. And that's and that's been an historical, sort of observation. So eventually the technology won, but, at that point, no technology won. There were actually 3 of us doing these touchscreen computers back then. But so in any case, I got a phone call from a friend who said, hey, how'd you like to start another company? And he put me together with the vice president for education at Apple, a guy named Bernie Gifford. And Bernie and I decided we were going to transform higher education. I thought this was just a beautiful concept. So Bernie had been the dean of the School of Education at Berkeley, and before that, Bernie was the vice chancellor of public schools in New York City. And then Apple had poached him out of Berkeley to run, Apple's education initiatives. And so I thought, oh my God, I've got Bernie Gifford. Bernie could open any door on the planet in education. So we had this incredible unfair advantage. And then Bernie helped me go find a guy named Ed Landesman, who had been, he had just recently stepped down as the chair of the Department of Mathematics at University of California, Santa Cruz. So Ed was looking for, sort of his next big thing. So we convinced Ed to join us to transform mathematics instruction in higher education. Because, we were going to apply all of the learnings that had gone on for the prior, at that point, it was the prior 30 years of research in the use of computers in education. So now, believe it or not, this is early 90s. And again, long story short, we built out a sequence of courses in mathematics that we became the #1 publisher of mathematics and instructional materials in higher education in the United States, passing Addison Wesley and Prentice Hall and Pearson and Harcourt Brace, HarperCollins, all those guys. We were the #1 publishers. We were in 475 colleges and universities in the United States. And we decided, okay, now we got math done, let's move on to the next thing. And then somebody swooped in and said, we want to acquire you. So it was HarperCollins. HarperCollins swooped in and said, we want to buy you. And we said, no, we're not for sale. What we did is we merged our business with a K-12 business and then took that company public. So that was a very cool outcome. But at that point, I thought, okay, let's try something different. And that's when I got a phone call from another friend who brought me together with Guy Kawasaki and a few other people, and that's when we started Garage. So when we started Garage, we considered ourselves venture capital entrepreneurs. We wanted to sort of redefine the venture capital ecosystem by creating a different kind of venture firm. And the thing that Guy and I were focused on was a couple of things. One, we felt that the venture capital system up until that point was this very closed old boys network that was, the sort of meme was, if you could get a golf game with John Doerr, you could raise venture capital or whatever. Not entirely true, but there was this basic feeling that the venture capital ecosystem was very closed and clubby and secretive. And we wanted to democratize venture capital. So our big idea was we're going to be open to everything. We're going to cast the net broadly. And that included, the other big idea behind Garage was that not every innovation came out of Silicon Valley. So we thought that our big competitive advantage was we were going to be a Silicon Valley venture firm that extended its reach around the world. So we literally started opening offices around the world. We actually, first we opened them around the US. We had an office in Boston, an office in Austin. And then we opened an office in Tel Aviv, in Israel. And then we opened an office in London to try to cover the rest of Europe. And we were heading around the world. We were talking about India, we were talking about Singapore, and then the bubble burst. So when the bubble burst, that kind of changed the whole world for us. So for those of you who, some of you who were born during the bubble, it's hard to believe. Okay. The bubble was this explosive period in entrepreneurship and venture capital around the development of the internet in the late 90s, running through to the beginning of 2001. And the bubble started deflating in 2000 and finally popped at the end of the first quarter of 2001, about the same time when most of you were just getting out of diapers, right? Sorry. So that was a pretty, traumatic event in the history of venture capital. Then we entered what is referred to as the nuclear winter, when nobody was investing in new companies anymore. Everybody was just trying to save the best of their portfolio. And we were all going through this triage of, who do we just let die and who do we try to save? It was very brutal. It was very painful. But at that point, we had, close to 80 investments, and about half of them were gone within 2 years at that point. But then the market came back, and we were, the market was sort of building up, and it looked like, okay, we were going to get back to something near normal. And then kaboom, we had the global financial crisis in 2008, and then we entered another nuclear winter in 2009, 2010. And then we started climbing back out again. And so now we are in, arguably, we're getting close to the longest expansion in venture capital history. So the market has been reasonably normal since 2011. And so we've had a good long period of time for entrepreneurship and venture capital to develop healthy roots now around the world. The thing that did not happen after the nuclear winter, so we came out of the nuclear winter in 2003-04, and by the time things fell apart in 2008, there wasn't enough time for the global innovation ecosystem to get its feet. Now, since we've had 7 or 8 years of reasonably healthy development, what we've seen is this very strong development of innovation ecosystems now around the planet. So all over the world now, you've got some reasonably well-developed innovation happening, still very asymmetric around the world. But then the other thing that's happened, which is probably the the biggest, most important trend in venture capital and entrepreneurship is, because of the combination of sort of these multiple technologies coming together, the internet on the one hand, and the distribution of the internet wirelessly, then the smartphone on the other hand, and the ability for, at this point now, there are a couple of billion people on the planet who don't have laptops but are actively on the internet. Sort of in the olden days, the assumption was to be on the internet, you had to have a computer. Now, for most people, that's, why would I bother? And so that has enabled the development of all sorts of applications that we couldn't do, sort of in the earlier era, thanks to mobility. And then, the third thing that has happened is the combination of, thanks to Moore's law and the improvement in processor power, we've got the ability to do increasingly sophisticated applications, at the edge, and thanks to wireless connectivity, even more sophisticated applications that are hosted in the cloud. And so the power of applications has dramatically exploded. Laying on top of all of that are all of these tools that have developed, and so that almost anyone can develop and launch an application. And so now what's happened is that everything is open to innovation. Everything is open to disruption by the development of new applications, new business models, and new networks, new collaborations, new ecosystems that can change the way you do business in almost every sector of the world. The two, interestingly, to this discussion, what is shocking, what I never would have believed, way back when, is how little impact computing and technology has had on education. It's mind-boggling how little impact technology has had on education. So, the three sectors that are core to our world, right? Three sectors that are core to our world, government, education, and religion, right? Seem impervious to, to substantial, evolution thanks to technology. But, that's a longer and different discussion. But let me stop there. And with that little editorial comment, open it up for kind of what you guys are thinking in terms of where do you think there are opportunities for entrepreneurial innovation.
It occurred to me listening to you, Bill, too, is that we have this whole generation of me listening to Los Angeles who managed to embrace TV evangelists, like managed to embrace technology to grow their churches. But you're right. I mean, beyond that.
But it's amazing, right? I mean, still to this day, that is, it still leans on an old technology, television, right? I mean, I suppose, now we have different distribution. So the internet gives you different distribution of what is basically an old technology around video, videos. It's, you could argue, well, I don't know, but it's more stunning to me that education, and which you would imagine, because of the importance and because of the brains in education, that somebody would have cracked this nut. But there you guys are sitting at tables with whiteboards, right? So, okay, this is pretty novel. We're having a video conference. So, I mean,
technology hasn't played such a huge part in education due to the fact of kind of what your story was earlier, saying that you were funding this project for a touch screen computer, but the application into the real world setting, it was just too expensive to apply it. So do you think that budgets and funding of education could play a huge factor in the reason why we don't utilize technology much?
Yeah, I mean, there's a vast amount. So the irony, I think my own read on it is that it's not that technology is too expensive to use in education, because after all, at this point, every one of you has access to the internet, and on the internet, there's massive amounts of educational material available to you. And so there's really nothing that you can learn in the classroom that you can't learn on your iPhone, right? Yeah. I mean, it's just a lot more expensive for you to learn it in the classroom than it is for you to learn it on your iPhone. That seems kind of odd, doesn't it?
I think more what she means is like actually bringing the technology to the classroom and replacing all the whiteboards in every classroom in the school, and how much that's gonna, I mean, if we were gonna do that, the school would have to ask us for so much more in tuition, and I don't think a lot of people want to pay that, and I don't think the school can front that much money. Or
well, that assumes that that's the right way to transform the classroom.
True.
That assumes that the right way to transform the classroom is to create touchscreen whiteboards, and that's certainly not the only way to transform the educational experience. But the flip side is, right, so that all of these, Harvard and MIT and Stanford have all created these online MOOCs, right? Massive online, what's the other O stand for? But courses.
They're just massively online programs where students can get on, they can get an education, and in most cases they don't charge anything for it either.
Right. So you can take a complete computer science course from a top tier professor at MIT online for free. And you can take the tests online, and you can submit the homework online. You don't need a whiteboard. You don't need a, classroom. You can do that all for free. If you want to get certified, if you want MIT to say you passed this course, then you pay money. But if you just want to learn, you can do that for free. But that doesn't work. So part of I think the lesson of technology in education is there's a really important dynamic that happens in a classroom between students and between the student and the instructor that is a critical part for the engagement and processing and retention of knowledge and understanding. Of course, you could go back to 1456 and say, well, hell, you got books, right? You have whatever, any knowledge that was worth acquiring, all you had to do was read a book. What do we need these expensive universities for? But obviously obviously books won as well, but universities perpetuated in spite of the existence of books. Literally, the academic universe was really anxious about books because they were afraid books were going to displace them. Why would I need my professor at Oxford when I could get a book instead, right? That was really threatening to Oxford University. And so we just we see that replaying, with every generation of technology. The good news for the professors, is that what we have learned is that presenting knowledge is not very effective as a way of increasing learning. There's another thing that goes on between the presenting of knowledge and the development of learning in the brain that seems to have something to do around, engagement and processing, and there's some human social aspect to the learning process that is part of the reason why just putting a course on a computer doesn't solve the problem. But, maybe one of you guys will solve the problem. I don't know. So I didn't necessarily mean this to turn into an ed tech debate, but I'm happy, it's obviously a topic that's very near to my heart. One of Bernie's favorite quips was the story of the Oxford Don, who fell asleep in the 15th century and woke up 5 centuries later and looked around and said, oh, okay, wow, that's great. This is still here, pretty much the same as it was, but boy, has the Roman Catholic Church changed a lot. The joke, of course, is, pardon?
One of the problems I think probably that technology hasn't been also in education sooner is that a lot of the professors that we're seeing, it's starting to kind of shift too, but professors are usually, middle-aged to a little bit on the a little bit older side. And this is just being honest. And so those in that generation, in that era, they didn't necessarily have a lot of technology to use as application, and that's not necessarily the way that they learn. So maybe closing the gap and having them do more trainings and instruction on how to apply and use technology within the classroom could maybe close that gap and then make kind of a evolution into more technological presentations and class instruction.
I think, that is clearly part of it, though. As Bernie told me many years ago, that's what they said in the 60s when they started introducing computers into education. They said, oh, all the academics, they don't understand computers, but now that we have a generation that's growing up with computers, they'll know how to use computers. So, it's obviously more than that. There's clearly something about just the model that we haven't figured out yet.
So Bill,
I
can share a little bit about what's going on here. I've only been here a couple of years now, but the story that's been shared with me is that this university was originally a leader in what they called distance education, pre-internet. Because of the rural environment we're in, a lot of people have to travel, hours to get here. So they developed programs where we could bring education to them.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the university kind of slacked off on that a bit. The internet happened, and a lot of other people picked up momentum. On internet, we didn't make the transition as effectively as we could. Today, honestly, about half of our students are online students. And it's
okay. And how's that working?
I think it's evolving, but in spite of that fact, if you look across the university, just getting professors to use Canvas. Canvas is our learning management system. You've probably heard of that one. But getting professors to use like the grade book and put their presentations online and embrace some of those tools has been a real challenge for the university. And I'm not sure whether it's people are threatened or they don't understand the technology or they're used to doing it a certain way. But like a lot of other universities too in the rural environment, we're seeing that a lot of competition from online providers, from other universities with bigger online programs. Because the students that we once took for granted in our own backyard, we can't take for granted anymore, right? So, but the university is not very good at marketing outside of this area, and we don't have the funds. So now we're looking at bringing in an OPM, an online program management company, that'll drive enrollment and sell some of our online offerings. And of course, that OPM will have certain expectations about what programs are offered online and what you do with gradebooks and what you do with presentations. So, like it or not, we're about to get, dragged into that environment even further. So, I mean, just a sketch of kind of what we're dealing with as an institution.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Oh, Rand, you had mentioned that before. I had forgotten that part of the Oregon story. So yeah. So it's I don't think it's just a matter of professors being old farts and not getting technology. I think it has something to do with figuring out a different model. And there's actually an article that relatively recently came out, and if you want to look at it, Wilson, it's some study on online learning or changing the model of learning, that I think the title of it is the lecture dead, or should we get rid of the lecture, or something like that, which is, it's a reprise of a topic that has come up every 10 years, for the last, so I've sort of paid attention to this for almost 30 years now, and the same topic comes up on a regular basis. It's probably come up every 10 years for the last 300 years. Is the stand and deliver lecture presentation of stuff, is that really the best model for developing learning? And when it's phrased that way, hardly anybody would agree that that's the best model. Everybody knows that somehow, some form of interactive learning is better than sort of listening and taking notes. And the problem is to create interactive learning. So that's, it's, I think some areas are better at that than others. Obviously, lab courses, classically, are better than that at that. It's hard to turn, history into a lab course, right? It's easier to turn language, certainly e-marketing certainly could be a lab course. I assume there's some lab aspect to what you guys are doing, right?
Yeah.
So, but okay, that's sort of at the simplest level, making it more interactive. But it's hard to do that with every subject area. And it's just easier to present information and hold students accountable for absorbing it and then testing them on it. That's just kind of an easier model, but it doesn't generate a lot of good learning. So, okay, enough of that. I'm sorry. What other,
Let me throw it out to the students, as long as we've got an audience here that's familiar with the topic.
Yeah.
What do you like about online learning? What do you not like about it? What kinds of improvements would you like to see? I mean, what would make it a better experience for you?
I'm an interactive learner, so I don't like online classes. I have a hard time motivating myself to do the online work just because I don't like online learning. It's a personal. I don't know. I like the interaction. I learn better from it. I retain information better because I ask questions. That's just my learning style. So if there's a way to do that online that was better than the way we're doing it now. I know that you can do this. You can Skype a professor or do whatever like that. But I don't know. It's more of a pain than anything.
Interesting point. Right. Yeah.
If there was a way to be more interactive online, it would be a better experience for me. Yeah.
I'm kind of in James' boat. I'm a senior here at Eastern Oregon, and I still have yet taken an online course.
Oh, okay.
One this summer, and it was forced upon me so I could graduate, so I'll be taking it this summer. But I love class. I like being in class. I like showing up. I like talking to people. I like seeing faces. A lot of times I feel like online coursework is more busy work. It's just kind of thrown at you, and I can click through it in about 10 or 15 minutes and be done, and not soak up a single thing. So I find in classroom exercises and activities to be really helpful. I can ask questions.
Right. Interesting. Right. No, I mean, yeah, that's, we've known this for a long time. It's really hard to design good interactive online materials.
Right.
So, and
that's the challenge then, is how do you create an interactive online environment for students to be able to soak up and retain the information like an online, like an in class, where it's based on. Carson, what do you think?
I don't like it because it's more expensive.
That too.
The charges.
You're not getting I feel like you're not getting the same level of like the experience and everything. You're doing less online, but it costs more.
Yeah,
really? You have to pay a premium for an online course?
At least at our university, it's quite a bit more, noticeably more expensive.
Twice.
Yeah, the university the university is trying to encourage students to take courses on campus. So they, created an uplift pricing for the online courses, which is really interesting because online is where we've decided now we're trying to grow, right? So we charge.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
That's
interesting.
the way academics try to run business.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting. Right. So there is this perception that online is more expensive than in class. But in the grand scheme of things, we know that in class is way more expensive in sort of true cost accounting sense than online.
Correct. Because they were one time and it's good for the next 3 years or however long until they feel like they need to update it.
Right. So, one of our big shocks when the fourth company I was telling you about, the university education company, it was a company called Academic Systems was the name of the company. And so we were, thanks to Ed and our broad philosophy, the intent was to make it highly interactive and highly personalized. And so the design of the courseware was, before each topic, there was a pretest that was actually a diagnostic to understand how much you already knew in the topic area. It was about a 3, 4, 5 minute, pretest. And based on your results, we would then customize the material you saw to focus on the stuff that you did not already know. And then there was this set of remediation loops in each topic of mathematics. Math teachers have learned there are sort of systematic misunderstandings that they've come across over the years. And so we had these little videos, they were animations to explain the topic in a different way. So we'd have the core explanation in an animation. And then we would have these, what we called them remediation loops. Get a problem, say, okay, you're confusing, dividend for divisor or whatever. Can you hear me? Did I lose you?
No, I
can you hear me?
I want to interrupt for a second because we're closing in on the hour. Some of the students have other classes to go to. But I know they want to be polite too, so they're politely fidgeting. So, and I'm respectful of your time too.
Because you gotta. So, does class end at 11?
Yes. So, I know you probably have other stuff.
Okay.
So if you have time to stay and talk with us, talk. And I want any of you that have classes, have schedules to go, feel free to go do that. I don't want you to feel like you're being held hostage. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for talking to us.
Thanks a lot, guys. All right. Take care.
So So how does your day look, Bill?
So yeah, no, and well, I got to jump at noon. So I've got a group here that is expecting me to walk in at noon. So, 3 more minutes or whatever. But the point I was simply going to make, just to finish that, was we had budgeted $2 million per course, per semester course. It wound up costing us $4 million per course to develop a semester's worth of mathematics instruction, which, was a pretty big delta. It costs a lot of money to build these courses. So, we were lucky. We had great backers. We had great venture capital backers, but they weren't that delighted that we were that far over budget. So, but in any case, any other quick questions before we break?
Yeah, how do you decide what companies or application companies to fund and to invest into based off your business model and stuff? How do you acquire those companies, or do they come approach you and ask, hey, can we borrow this amount of money? How does that all work?
Yeah. So, one of the big tasks of a VC is to source high quality investment opportunities. So, the good thing is we've developed enough of a brand that we have a lot of people coming at us. So we have a lot of entrepreneurs that come to us directly, or they come to us referred by friends who know us. So we have a lot of inbound. But, what we've always believed is that VCs who depend upon inbound deal flow are stupid. That, the way you get the best opportunities is if you reach out. If you go out and you're out in the community and you're reaching out, you're casting the net, and you're, getting visible out there and approaching high quality entrepreneurs, asking other investors, asking, the professors at Stanford and the professors at Berkeley, and the directors over at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory and things like that. You got to be outbound. And then you have this filtering problem. So you have massive numbers of opportunities. You obviously can't invest in them all. You can't even spend a lot of time with many of them. So you have this process of how do I know quickly that I'm never going to invest in this particular opportunity. And so it's kind of a brutal model. Mm-hmm. But what we figured out is that for about 90% of the opportunities that we see, we spend somewhere between 10 and 15 seconds to eliminate them. So it's a horrible thing to admit to entrepreneurs, because they've sweated blood and they've worked all night to put together this deck, to put together this summary, to put together this pitch. And in 15 seconds, we say, nope, never mind.
What are you looking for?
So what we're looking for, the two big things we're looking for are a unique and compelling value proposition. So what we want to see, first of all, we want to see that the entrepreneur has figured out a way to deliver compelling value to their customers, such that people will pay, people will take notice, people will pay money, people will go, wow, that's amazing, how do I get that? So unique and compelling value proposition is at the core of any good opportunity. Now the problem is most entrepreneurs don't know how to articulate that. So what they do, their product, they talk about their technology. Most entrepreneurs don't talk about their compelling value proposition. They assume that if they say, we've got this blockchain, crypto, tokenized quantum computing, blah, 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 that we will be blown away by the power of their technology and assume that it's great investment. But what we really want to know is, what's the value proposition? We can cut the cost of delivering, insurance underwriting by 90%. That's amazing, right? If you can cut the cost to underwrite, an insurance policy by 90%, that's huge. Now, if you use AI or you use quantum or you use crypto. I don't care. I want to know what the value proposition is. So that's the one thing. The second thing is that we look for is an unfair advantage. What we want is a team, is a company, that has some unique unfair advantage that's going to enable them to perpetuate their competitive advantage for some period of time. So, you can build a business buying, hats in Mexico for $1 and selling them in Palo Alto for $10, and which could be a third of the price of what you pay at the Stanford shopping mall. So that's a compelling value proposition. Same hat, 1/3 the price, but there's no unfair advantage there because anybody can import a hat from Mexico and sell it at a discount. So we're looking for some reason why the team or the technology or the partnerships or the sector gives them an unfair advantage. So if we can't see a compelling value proposition and an unfair advantage in the first 15 seconds, then, we'll probably say sorry. So that's sort of the harsh reality.
Do you invest in companies that are tech related or tech business related? Like, do you invest in any other types of businesses?
So we are different. While I said we're tech agnostic, we do have a constraint on us that we've self-imposed that makes us different than some other VCs, which is that we do want the company to have some novel, compelling core technology that gives them an unfair advantage. So what we've seen and found over the years is that businesses that are built based on clever business models, arguably Uber, for example, or arguably Airbnb. Neither of those are really technology companies. They are novel business models. And so while I have to admit, we actually had the chance to invest in Lyft. Before Uber had even come out, we knew the guys at Lyft. And while we thought, we really liked the idea, we liked the guys, there was no unfair advantage. It was a clever idea. The idea of ride sharing, is a clever idea. But what we saw was that it was the kind of business that was going to cost a huge amount of money to build the business, and that there wasn't any defensibility to it per se, other than spending a huge amount of money and building a brand. So I really wish we had invested in Lyft, but we didn't. So we don't invest in those kinds of businesses that where the key to success is building a brand, and that's just tough for us. So with that, you guys got to go. I got to go. But it was great meeting you guys. It was great talking with you guys. Wilson, if there are follow-up questions, you know how to reach me. And maybe we can continue this again someday.
Okay? Answering all our questions.
All right.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay. Good luck to you all.
Yeah, I've got somebody to introduce you to. I didn't know you were so into ed tech.
Okay.
But thank you.
Oh, really? Yes.
Thank you so much for making